Welcome, and glad you're with us today. My name is Bruce Tamlyn, and I'm the retired chaplain at Silver Bay, and I'm grateful that they've invited me to continue to lead a few programs here at Silver Bay. I'm here at the Trinity House Library with Austin Porth, who's our digital marketing and media specialist, who is filming this program for us. Thank you, Austin. And we started last month a series of programs called Making the Most of This Precious Life. And that's the theme of all of these programs we're doing for Inside Silver Bay, and hope you're able to tune into them when you can. This series is really about, again, making the most of this beautiful gift of life that we've been given. And as we work through these programs, they're connected in a way that takes a look at sort of the psychological and spiritual dimensions of our life and attempts to enhance our life and for us to continue to grow into the women and the men that we've been called to grow into. So the last couple of sessions, I focused on what we've called the 10 core components of living a centered and joy-filled life. And again, our overall theme, making the most of this precious life. And then we've been focusing on the 10 core components of living a centered and joy-filled life. And in our last session, we looked at these four: knowing we are loved, forgiveness, caring for the body, and being of service. And we did a specific program just on this last one, being of service. So those are the last two programs we've done. Today, we're going to focus on the next of these four components for living a centered and joy-filled and blessed life. But before we do that, I would like to just do a short centering activity for us. And I'm going to step over and use this chair here that's in our library. And what I'd like us to do is, if you could find a comfortable place to sit in your home or where you might be, a comfortable, relaxing place. And as you sit in the chair or find a comfortable place to sit, is to really feel the support of the chair and the support of the floor. And we're just going to do a centering breathing exercise. Some might even think it as a form of meditation, and some might think it as a form of centering prayer. But it's very simple. What we do is we just close our eyes, and to begin with, we just do a body scan, sort of starting at our feet. And what we're doing is seeing if there's any place in our body that we're holding tension. So what I would invite you to do is to close your eyes, relax into the chair, just take a breath or two. And then again, starting with your feet, just feel if there's any tension you're holding there. And if so, just gently be aware of that tension and let it go. And then you can move up to your lower legs, your calf muscles and knees, and see if there's any tension that you might be holding there. And then to move up to your thighs and into your torso, and to sense if there's any tension there. And then you move up your lower back and your chest area, and just scan to see if you might be holding some tension there. And then you move up into your shoulders and arms, and making sure to just relax your shoulders And then just beginning to get in touch with your neck area and your head, and see if you happen to be holding any tension there. And then again, with a nice breath, just letting go the tension in your body. And then we're going to do a short breathing exercise where what we do is we're really aware of our breath, and we're aware of our inhalation, taking air in, and then exhaling. And as we exhale, we just say in our mind's eye a mantra word, a word that brings a sense of peace, a sense of calm. It might be the word peace, or it might be the word love, or it might be the word calm, or any word that you would choose that puts you in touch with a state of real inner peace, contentment, a space of relaxation. And so we'll be aware of our breath in, and then our exhalation, our breath out, and as we breathe out, we just, in our mind's eye, say our mantra word. And let's continue to do this at your own pace. Inhale and exhale, focusing on your breath and the word that you've chosen as you exhale. We'll just do this for a few more breaths together. So let me invite you now back into the room, and just to say that if you have some more time, you might do this on a regular basis and have an opportunity just to center yourself, to feel the beauty that is within you, and to allow yourself into that calm state, and focusing on your breath and knowing that you can turn to this whenever you feel anxious or you ever feel you need to do some centering activity. So thank you for joining in on this. So again, our series is about coming to understand the gift that this life is that we've been given. And I am so firmly committed to this idea of helping others, helping those who come to Silver Bay, just know of this immense gift that we've been given, this beautiful life. And as I look out upon the lake today here at Silver Bay, it's a beautiful rainy day. This rain is going to grow our flowers and our grass. And whether it's sunny or raining, this day is a gift. And again, this session is to focus on these 4 principles that are part of this series of 10 we're going to ultimately talk about. And the first one we want to talk about is really number 5 in this series, and this is what we're talking about, is embracing vulnerability. Embracing vulnerability. Our ability to be vulnerable is one of the keys, I think, to living a life of wholeness, a life of inner contentment, a life of freedom, and a life of peace. You see, vulnerability is the willingness to be open and honest about our human nature, about who we are, about our brokenness and our wholeness, about who we are as human beings. Each of us are on an ongoing journey to become more the people that we were created to be that way. And in the good book, it talks about, may I have the ability and the strength to remove the log from my own eye before I worry about the twig in somebody else's eye. And this idea of being vulnerable is to be able to look at that maybe log in our own eye. What we often do, we sometimes sort of project our own sort of issues onto others. That way we kind of do it unconsciously. And the idea of looking at the log in our own eye before sort of pointing out something in somebody else's eye is a way of being vulnerable. And when I talk about this, I'm not talking about being vulnerable all over the place or with lots of people in that way. I'm talking about being vulnerable with yourself and with a few other people that you're close with, who you really trust, who you really value, and who you know that your being vulnerable with them would be well received and would be an encouraging thing for you that way. And you might even choose to do it with a dear friend or a pastor or a chaplain or a therapist or somebody that you just find that it would be helpful to be able to talk about who you are in your whole life that way. Carl Rogers, maybe those of you that have studied counseling theory will recognize the name Carl Rogers. He's the founder of what is called client-centered therapy. And his notion was, and one of his key contributions to the field of counseling psychology, was the idea that the more congruence we had between our outer behavior, what we show the world, and what's going on inside of us, the congruence between that external behavior and what's going on inside, the more congruence, the healthier we were as human beings, the more emotionally healthy we were. His thought was, if what we're showing on the outside is sort of an act and what's going on inside is very different than that, he thought that was a sign of a sort of an imbalance for us. And I really agree with him about this. And so the idea of vulnerability is that I would like to be who I am, both inside and out. There's some congruence to who I am and how I conduct my life that way. And so this is where vulnerability provides real freedom for us. So I'm not hiding anything. I'm not holding on to something or hiding in a way that doesn't allow me to really be who I am. And so I don't have to work hard every day at sort of hiding something or covering something up, that I can just be more free that way. When I do, I'm privileged to do weddings and have been for many years here at Silver Bay, and I always encourage the couple that I'm going to plan to perform their wedding ceremony to do some premarital counseling. And I talk about vulnerability as a key issue in marriage that way. The idea, can we really be vulnerable with one another? Because in that way, I want my spouse to know all of me. I just don't want to show her the good parts of me. I want her to know all of me, because then I know if I show her all of me and she still loves me, I know that I'm fully loved. I'm not loved for just what I want her to see. And so I think the idea of vulnerability in marriage, and I say to couples, is what will grow your marriage, what will grow your love for each other, is your willingness to be vulnerable with one another. The quote that I'd like to use from this comes from a psychologist named Robert Johnson, and he said this once. It comes out of Jungian therapy, Carl Jung's work, But he said the amount of transformation we will experience, the amount of growth we will experience, is proportionate to the amount of truth we can stand about ourselves. And so this is where that vulnerability comes in. Can I really take a look at myself in an honest way and come to understand there's some things I really like about who I am, and there's some things I'm okay with about who I am, and then there's some things that I'd like to work on that I'm not as comfortable. And those are the parts to bring to a relationship that you trust in a way and to be vulnerable with. And the truth, sometimes we are people that we don't like as much, and there's parts of me that, boy, I wish I could change that, or I wish I could be different around that. And that's where, as soon as we begin to speak about it and talk about it and be vulnerable about it, it begins to change. It loses its power that way. And so the truth is, sometimes I'm greedy, and sometimes I'm very generous, and sometimes I'm kind of cantankerous and hard to get along with. Other times I'm really easy to get along with, and sometimes I'm disagreeable, and sometimes I'm very agreeable. We have these different parts of us and different sides to us that way. The idea being that when I allow myself to be vulnerable, I can address some of those parts of me that I would really like to change, that I really like to grow into that way. And there's another aspect about this, is that when we are holding on to a secret about ourselves or something that we can't be vulnerable with, it tends to grow inside of us. It sort of, it takes on a life of its own. And so what I encourage people to do is to, something that you're holding on to, is to be able to share it with somebody you really trust and be able to say, hey, this is what's going on for me, and I need to share this with you, and I hope you can understand and help me work through this. Because if we hold on to it just ourselves, it begins to grow and gain more power, and all of a sudden we find ourselves sort of in a not a healthy place. As soon as we share it, we bring it into the light of day, and in the light of day it doesn't have as much power, and it begins to fade away that way. So when we're willing to be vulnerable, I really believe that we tend to take on characteristics and qualities that we really do like about ourselves. And so I can actually say about myself, sometimes I'm not very easy to get along with, and I just want to admit that, and I apologize to my wife or somebody that I'm not getting along with in a good way. And another part about vulnerability I want to speak about briefly is that, and maybe this has been your experience, but when you have a really heart-to-heart conversation with somebody, and you're vulnerable with them and they're vulnerable with you, and you really have this beautiful connection, my question to you is, as that relationship occurs and you have that conversation, do you find yourself being drawn closer to that person, or do you find yourself moving away from them? Well, in my experience around this, and maybe in yours too, I find that vulnerability brings us closer together. We more can identify with each other. We understand and we see past our brokenness and see the opportunity to be in relationship, even though we have come to know each other at deeper and deeper levels. So I'm just a big fan of our ability to be vulnerable in the appropriate places. And going back to Carl Rogers' work just for a minute here, the more my behavior on the outside reflects who I am on the inside, the more emotionally healthy I will be, and that we will be. And in turn, the greater sense of, I think, inner peace and contentment and an inner joy of life we will experience. So those are some words about vulnerability, and I hope that they are helpful for you in terms of your life that way. The second core component, living a life that celebrates the beauty of this life we've been given, is conscious awareness. Conscious awareness. Now, what do we mean by the term conscious awareness? Well, here are some examples. It's easier to speak about these as as sort of questions. How aware am I of the anxiety and the fear and the worry that I hold on to? As I have a chance to work with people in the work that I do in spiritual direction and therapy and pastoral counseling, some folks have, and I don't mean to judge it, but some folks sort of, worry has been so much a part of them that it's like part of their life now. We don't know our life without sort of worry. So the idea of conscious awareness is, let me be aware of where I am holding on to anxiety so I can begin to identify it and let it go. Another question, how aware are we of how my behavior or how your behavior and actions impact the lives of others? And so the thought I have about that is that I want to grow to be more aware of how my actions are impacting other people that way, negatively or positively. And so I'll ask Sarah, my wife, every once in a while, hey, am I the impact am I having okay for you? And again, she'll tell me the truth, which I appreciate. Another question is, how conscious are we of our need to be in control of things? Controlling ourselves, controlling others. That way, control tends to be a fairly strong attribute that many of us have that way. And so another question, how aware am I of the self-care that I need to be healthy? How much sleep do I need? My eating patterns, my exercise patterns, my desire for activity that way. How aware am I of those that contribute to my overall health? How aware am I of the role that social media plays in my life, and maybe in your life in that way? Social media, this whole new sort of advent over these last number of years, just the beautiful part of our lives in many ways, but it also can be a detractor if it's sort of taking over our life. I have been aware, and maybe you've heard of, they have these now camps for kids that can go to sort of get unhooked from media because it's become so much an addictive part of their life. Another question, how aware or conscious are we of our impact in sort of listening to the news every day? How much impact does that have on us that way? Or another question, how aware or conscious are we of our needs for nurturing, our needs for relationship, our needs for friendships, our needs for social interactions that way? Again, awareness and consciousness allows us to sort of deepen in our life experience. How aware or conscious are we of our values, of our intentions, of our passions, and our commitments? Am I able to stay true to who I am as I become and allow myself to be more aware of my conscious and awareness of what's going on around me that way? Sometimes we talk about this in a way of how awake am I? How awake are we? Or have we just sort of gone to sleep a bit? We're sort of sleepwalking through life. We go on from one thing to the next, and we're not as allowing ourselves to be aware. Growing in our conscious awareness means living with intention, honoring our commitments, living out our values, working towards the goals we've set for ourselves, and just not taking life for granted that way. Eugene Peterson, theologian, he says this, if you want to become a better person, become a deeper person. And what I think he means by that is that to be more consciously aware of our life, our impact on others, what we need in our own lives that way, and our capacity to be living this sort of grounded, joy-filled life. Living a life of conscious awareness takes in this idea that it's a journey for us. So I want us to be gentle with ourselves here, that we might be saying, golly, I'm not as conscious as I want to be. Don't be hard on yourself about that. It's okay. We are all growing, we're all on this path, and each of us have opportunities to grow in our consciousness that way. And some ways of doing that, you might keep a journal, or you might track your dreams and come to understand what they might mean. You might go on a retreat, an opportunity to step back and reflect on your life. You might come to a place like Silver Bay that really supports the idea of sort of inner work and coming to understand who we are. You might work with somebody who's a spiritual director or somebody trained to be able to work with you on growing in consciousness that way. In general, growing in our conscious awareness is to be living a life that has meaning and purpose and depth and joy. The kind of living that takes intention and commitment and reflection. Our life is a gift, and may we make the most of this gift by living with a greater sense of awareness and consciousness. The next, third one we want to look at today is simplicity. And simplicity has a number of facets to it. It's a much bigger topic that I'm going to, of course, talk in the next few minutes. But let's first talk about our stuff. When we talk about simplicity in our life, a lot of folks, including Sarah and I, talk about, boy, we have too much stuff. And when I ask people how many have too much stuff in a room full of people, all kinds of hands go up that way. And the idea of to ask ourselves the question, how many of us have too much stuff? And the idea is that when we realize we do, how do we begin to sort of offload it or give it away or share it? See, there's a subtle psychological concept here that says that we equate our sense of self by how much stuff we have. So the more stuff I have, the more I think better of myself that way. I have more stuff, so I must be better in some way. Well, it's not really true. The more stuff I have sometimes means that I'm overwhelmed with stuff, and my life is actually run by my stuff. The stuff I don't own the stuff owns me, and that's not where we want to go with this. The idea that our stuff, the more stuff we have, maybe will look better in the eyes of others. So look at all the stuff that she's got, or look at all the stuff that he's got. In reality, and I confess, I think some of us may be closeted hoarders. That we just have so much stuff. What we eventually want to do is to realize that this stuff robs us of our freedom. And the idea of being able to share stuff and give stuff away is really freeing for us. I have a friend that every time something new comes into his space, he's been given a gift or he goes and buys something, he has this rule that as something new comes in, something goes out. He gives something away. And so the idea is that stuff just doesn't accumulate that way. I have another friend who every week, commits to giving something away every week to somebody or some charity or some place that could use something of his that way. So he's always every week giving something away. So 52 times a year he's giving stuff away that way. So simplicity around boundaries. Let's talk about simplicity a little bit around social media, which we talked a few minutes ago. And I would recommend you watching a movie. It's on Netflix. It's called The Social Dilemma. And it talks about the effect that social media can have on us that way. I know I have a tendency to reach for my phone pretty quickly when I see somebody's contacted me, because it actually gives us an endorphin hit that way, and we get kind of addicted to that, somebody thinking about me or somebody I need to respond to or somebody, and all of a sudden this owns me instead of me owning it that way. So simplicity around and having healthy boundaries around social media, healthy boundaries around unhealthy images that come on TV or on movies that are just not healthy to be watching that way, healthy boundaries around people who pull you down or people that are a bit toxic for you, having healthy boundaries around those. Creating healthy boundaries is really necessary in our life because we are so bombarded all the time with so much stuff, so much news, so much awareness, so much information, so much ads. The idea of being able to create healthy boundaries in our life. I know some people that are able to, and I'm trying to learn myself to turn this off from about 5 o'clock until about 8 o'clock the next morning that way, or just having the ability to sort of unplug from that social media and from other sources that just sort of pour into us all the time. So in creating this a life of simplicity, was two questions. What helps me to have a healthier life? And what serves me to enhance my life and supports a positive quality to my life? I want more of that. And then the second question is, what is currently in my life that does not serve a healthy quality of life? What detracts from my life? What detracts from my experience of having an abundant, full life that way? And I want to lessen that in my life. I want to actually ask those things out of my life that way. So these two questions are important to consider. What supports me in my healthy lifestyle and having more of that, and what actually detracts from my life. And so our ability to make those choices, I think, will lead us to a greater freedom in our life around simplicity. And the last of our four core, or the fourth one we're going to look at today of these 10 core components of living a centered and joy-filled life, is this idea of renewal. Renewal. The question for us here is that are you open to the possibility of renewal, of a new aspect to our life, of a new possibility, of a new learning, of a new insight, of a new awareness? Sometimes we get so stuck in our ways, our habits, we get stuck in our routines, we get stuck in doing the same thing the same way. And I think we sometimes can close us off to renewal and the opportunity to have a renewed sense of life that way. New challenges, maybe new relationships, new experiences, new learnings, new understandings, new awareness. And I believe that if we open our hearts up to this idea of renewal, each day offers us an opportunity to grow and stretch and to open up to the possibilities that a new day brings. So let me close just by saying renewal. Let us stay open to the opportunities that come our way and the opportunities we can create to learn, to grow, and to renew ourselves, to open our hearts and minds to what it means to really be alive that way, and to have the courage and the insight and the wisdom to move towards those things that are renewing for us that way. Let us not be afraid to change. Let us not be afraid of taking on sort of new opportunities that way, and to let our lives sort of speak in a way that allows us to be renewed, regardless of what age we are and where we are in our life. The opportunity to be renewed is an opportunity to live into life in all of its abundance that way. So thank you for listening today. Thank you for being a part of this. And we'll look forward to seeing you on a future session. Take care and be well.